Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Go Big or Go Home. I am Old Man Troy, joined by the spectacular youngster Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. What's happening down in Florida today, my friend?
Not too much. No cars going on fire. Nothing crazy. So just normal week ahead.
Feels like a fire in my car.
Yeah.
Feels like it. Well, we've been recording this show for a week now, and I have no air conditioning, and our temperatures are up around 80. So I do apologize to the listeners when you hear background noise of honking horns, car engines revving. For those that are loyal listeners, you know that I record this on my way home, and I cannot do this show with the windows up in my car, Kevin. No way, no how. So we're going to have to grin and bear it with some outside noise today.
Yeah. Well, understandable. Although, like I tell you in the pregame, I couldn't tell you if you were in the car, if you were outside on monkey bars, or if you were in your own home. I can't hear anything. But although, I think it was last week's show, we heard honking. So anything's possible on the road. It was a perfectly timed honk because I had said something and it was like a honk, like in agreement or disagreement. It was awesome. So we'll see if we get any of that. What I'm really hoping is, as I'm stuck in the traffic, I get somebody yelling at another car, like the road rage yell. That would be so awesome to have somebody just yell, because drivers in Pittsburgh are terrible. They really are. And it's just funny. I laugh because you can hear them. When your windows are down, you can hear other people yelling at people. That would be so awesome if that could happen on the show today. That would be great. We do have a good show today. All of the major sports, basketball, football, they're all done. But we can't forget about the spring sports, youngster. Got a little baseball, got a little softball. They're still in their season. Lacrosse has already had their tournament. We've already got bids to the national tournament. We're going to talk a little spring sports in the Big Ten. And then, what I think is good news, and probably still some tweaking and probably still some ideas about this, but basketball, youngster, is adding games to the conference schedule. We're going to talk about that to wrap up the show today. After we talk about the spring sports in the Big Ten, and I know you're like a lacrosse guru now, so I'm going to turn this over to you. We're going to talk Big Ten spring sports. I'm probably not going to chime in much here. You're just kind of going to go over the standings and over some relevant news in these sports. Yeah, and I'm not – I won't say I'm a lacrosse guru, but I will start with lacrosse. Men's lacrosse, Johns Hopkins in Maryland, Johns Hopkins in the Big Ten, for those that don't know, for men's lacrosse. Men's lacrosse Big Ten tournament happened.
I guess I will interrupt. I'm glad they're not in the conference for like basketball or football. I don't think they have those sports. But it's another one of these independents. And we had a show. And the reason I interrupted is I wanted to plug the show. Look at this. We got an ambulance coming by, youngster.
There you go. I can hear that one.
That could be bad news. So, as you know, I record this while I'm stuck in the traffic jam, and like people are making it's great of people to make the way so they can get through. Probably means there's an accident up the way, so I might be sitting here a while. But my point is, I wanted to prop our show because we talked a few weeks back about Notre Dame and being in the ACC. You get these schools, Kevin, that are in a conference for selected sports. And we didn't get into whether we agree or disagree with that, but that's for maybe another show. But it's amazing now in today's world how conference affiliation, it's not just your old bread and butter schools like the original Big Ten. They add schools such as the Johns Hopkins to other sports. Whether you think it's good or bad for the conference, it does even out some things. It allows some schools to participate in a conference. So go back, Grueling Truth, if you're listening to this, you went there to listen to our show, go back in our archives if you want to hear what we think about Notre Dame and what we feel about them in the ACC and if they should join a conference for football. It was a good show we did about a month ago, youngster. Sorry to interrupt. Take it away again with some lacrosse news.
No, yeah. I'm reading some notes on this to make myself sound smarter than I am with this lacrosse stuff. But basically, Johns Hopkins played Maryland in the championship game. There was Ohio State, and I don't have the bracket up in front of me. There was another team in there. Johns Hopkins played Maryland, and Johns Hopkins won that game. Maryland was the number 2 team in the country going into the Big Ten tournament. Johns Hopkins was number 7 nationally. Maryland was number 1 in the Big Ten. Johns Hopkins number 2. And Johns Hopkins pulled off the upset. That being said, and I don't know, like I said, I know very, very little about lacrosse, and especially, the 2018 men's lacrosse season. I'm not going to act as though I've been following it left and right, but Maryland lost the Big Ten title game and is the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Not sure exactly how that works. They were national champions a year ago, and this is the 3rd straight year Maryland's men's lacrosse is the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. Pretty impressive stuff. If you follow men's lacrosse, you obviously know how dominant Maryland has been in recent history. But Johns Hopkins, and you mentioned it, Troy, for some of these schools, does it help the conference? I think it absolutely does. I think that if you're bringing in a random Notre Dame into basketball, then you would assume that Notre Dame would be pretty good to make the ACC want Notre Dame in its conference. Same thing with Johns Hopkins, at least to my knowledge, which again is very limited. For lacrosse, I think Johns Hopkins is always pretty good, and I'm reading here 46th appearance in the NCAA tournament as a school, 5th straight. I think they're semi-known for their lacrosse, if anything. So they earned the number 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. I'm not sure exactly, personally, how many teams make it. I don't know if it's 32. But in any case, I haven't looked at the tournament bracket yet. But Maryland's men's lacrosse got the number 1 seed in the entire tournament. Johns Hopkins number 5. So with that, I'll move on to the women's. And number 1 seed, Maryland's women's lacrosse team, won the Big Ten tournament. They played number 3 seed Penn State. This one I don't know as much as the men's, which for those listening is probably like, well, you didn't know jack squat about the men's, so so what are you talking about? But in any case, Maryland's women's lacrosse team won the Big Ten tournament. So they're automatically in. I'm trying to read and see. I don't know. Oh, no, I thought I read it earlier that the selection show is Sunday. Yep, Sunday. Okay, so hasn't happened yet. But Maryland definitely going to be in. Not sure, nationally where they rank. But that's our lacrosse news for the week. I don't know if you've got anything more on that, Troy. Otherwise, I'll dive into baseball and softball.
Nothing but maybe a funny story.
Sure.
Maybe a funny story from our college day. Well, I shouldn't say our college days. The youngster and I went to the same college, University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. Had to get the plug in there. We attended the same university at very, very different times. Big time gap in between. When I went to Whitewater, youngster, lacrosse was just a club sport. I'm not sure if it moved to varsity when you were there or if it's even a varsity sport there at all. It could still be club.
Yeah.
So you know how club sports are. Little bit of a step above intramurals. Pretty much if you want to play or try out, you just show up at practice. So I had a guy that lived on my floor. I lived in Wellers Hall. Did they have Wellers Hall there? I don't mean to make this a Whitewater show, but I never asked.
I know they have Wells East, Wells West. I don't know if they have Wellers.
Wellers was the small guy right below the hill by the tower dorm.
It sounds familiar.
That's where I live. Okay, well, not to bore the listeners. Anyway, I had a guy that lived on my floor that played lacrosse. And I was just sitting in my room one day, door open, saw him with his stick. He's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing, just watching some TV. He's like, hey, we need a couple players for practice. You want to come out and practice? I didn't have any intention to play lacrosse. So I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to play this game. I played for about 10 minutes. I got whacked across the back with a stick and said, that's enough. I'm done. That's it. That's all. That is my lacrosse experience. I'm done, over kaput. Just walked off the field. Not happening. Not having any part of this. those sticks hurt when they're racked across your back, youngster.
Yeah.
They're terrible. So anybody that's listening that has played lacrosse, you know what I'm talking about. It hurt. I left. That is my lacrosse story. A little bit of a funny story for today. So let's move on. Let's give the leaders in softball and baseball because I really want to get into Big Ten basketball and the schedule change.
Yeah, I will say this, too, that as a kid, I liked all kinds of sports. I'm more into tennis, I think, than the average person is. I'm also more into lacrosse than the average person is. Again, not that I follow, obviously, as you just heard. Not that I follow the ins and outs of lacrosse, but I think it's a cool game. I think water polo is a cool game that not many people know much about. I think tennis is cool. I think it's fun to play. I'm decent at it. Lacrosse, I never played. I can't even make that statement. But I think it's a cool sport. It's entertaining for me to watch. And I remember as a kid even watching.
Well, I really didn't play, Kevin. I mean, I stepped on the field. I think I caught it once and passed it once, and then I got whacked across the back. I don't know if you can consider that actually playing lacrosse. I didn't do much. But I stepped on the field. I guess I can say I played in one lacrosse exhibition-type game because it was practice and a scrimmage. So, all right, that's it. I told you, I'm in rare form today.
I'll start with baseball just because it's going to be shorter. Because baseball, the Big Ten tournament doesn't start until, I've got it up here, May 23rd, goes until May 27th. So baseball, it's just literally, I'm going to be reading off the standings, not top to bottom. But Minnesota is number one right now at 14-3. Michigan's also 14-3. Minnesota's 32-12 overall. Michigan's 29-14. So these basically, for baseball, you've got, 2 weeks, pretty much? Yeah, 2 weeks left. A little over 2 weeks as we're recording the show on the, what is it today? 8th? Yes. May 8th, we're recording this. But so Big Ten baseball, Minnesota, Michigan, both at 14-3, Purdue 13-4, and then you've got a big gap. Ohio State 11-7, Illinois 11-7, Iowa 9-7, Indiana 9-8. Somewhat kind of like basketball, Troy, where you got a couple of the teams who are obviously, in this case, 3, way above everyone else, and kind of like we saw with Ohio State when their surprise men's basketball season. Ohio State was up there with Purdue and Michigan State for the majority of the year, and then it's like, okay, who's going to separate themselves outside of Ohio State having a surprise season? Michigan obviously did that going to the title game. But you see the top 3 teams in the Big Ten, and then you've got kind of this big drop-off to Ohio State, Illinois, Iowa. Indiana's 9-8, and then the rest of the schools I'm not even going to mention, but there's 6 schools under 500. Like I said, only thing to, I guess, take note if you're a very casual Big Ten fan is the baseball tournament is in Omaha, Nebraska, May 23rd to 27th. Next week's show, we'll update the standings, and once, the tournament bracket is out, then can dive a little more into it. But both Troy and I, we're not going to lie to you.
Yeah, we might talk about some of the better players that are in the Big Ten as we get closer to the tournament.
Sure.
I kind of browsed through it. I haven't watched any of the games. It's hard to find Big Ten baseball to watch. I have the Big Ten Network, but it's not as well televised, of course, as basketball and football. So I do follow it. I go to the Big Ten website all the time and just kind of scroll down and look at, who's going on, because eventually some of these guys, we're going to see their names in the big leagues. And
right.
It's kind of neat that we do a Big Ten show. So I just kind of wanted to see, man, is there any nationally dominant players that could get selected in the Major League Baseball draft coming up this year? And there will be. I don't know how many of these guys will be dominant players, but it's always nice to have good representation from the Big Ten. But we'll definitely touch on that a little bit more as we get closer to the Big Ten tournament and the national tournament. I will say this, youngster, I really enjoy the College World Series as a whole. I always have. I think it's one of those sporting events that they probably are at the point now where they're overhyping it, but I've always liked the format. I've always liked how it's played out. You go to the same location every year. I love the College World Series. And a lot of times, and we've talked about this, a lot of times it's not teams from the Big Ten. We talked about it last year on the show, that the Big Ten has a lot of things to overcome as far as baseball is concerned because of geographical location. That's why you always see the Stanfords out there and the Cal schools and the Stanfords and all of those schools that are out west and from the south, because they can play baseball year-round. Where in the Midwest, you've got to go inside. You got to take ground balls on a gym floor. I know some of these facilities have AstroTurf, but it's not the same as playing outside.
No.
Not the same. And that's a disadvantage to Big Ten baseball. So we always get excited around this time of the year, at least I know I do, youngster, hoping that one of these Big Ten schools can make the College World Series. I would love it. Carry on, my friend.
Yeah, and growing up, I mean, I was a basketball kid first and foremost, and I could play basketball 365 days a year. I played recreational, winter, spring, summer, fall, all 12 months of the year. I was on a travel team. I mean, it was just nonstop. There was never any stopping. I don't know what it was like growing up as a kid in Wisconsin. I didn't move there until I was 12. Now I'm back in Florida. But
let me tell you this, youngster, a lot of snow.
Yeah.
A lot of snow growing up as a kid in Wisconsin, because I did.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd tell you.
I figured not much has changed. But yeah, it's just harder. I mean, and, the same goes for Florida hockey. I mean, I had no idea. I had never even heard of any, hockey camps, hockey leagues, hockey anything. In the state of Florida, we had rinks. I know that, but as far as leagues and anything, I had no clue. You talk about Big Ten hockey, for men's hockey, 3 of the Final 4 teams were from the Big Ten. I mean, it's just geographic stuff. I mean, you really don't have to get into anything more than that. There's a reason why Big Ten teams have historically been had bigger offensive linemen and run more often than West Coast teams who throw the ball left and right, and teams in Texas, basically the Big 12, throw it all over the field because that's just what they do, because quarterbacks can throw it all over the field because it's not 38 degrees and windy and snowy, and it's just different. Unfortunately, I think it would be cool if everything was perfectly 100% all the same, but at the same time it is cool when you have a warm weather team like the Atlanta Falcons who play in a dome, have to travel to Green Bay for the NFC title game, and it's just you can see the difference. I mean, that Atlanta's not as comfortable. It's interesting. It's a part of sports. But so like you're saying, Troy, baseball, softball, Big Ten's not historically dominant. Hockey, completely different story. But so anyway, getting to softball before we get into the Big Ten schedule for men's basketball, to wrap up the show, softball, their regular season is over. Michigan, at least it's got to be over. It's just weird because there's 21 games played for some of the schools. I don't know. In any case, the Big Ten tournament seeding is finalized. The first game is May 10th, which is Thursday. May 10th, May 11th, the 12th is the championship game. Actually, the semifinals and championship both take place on the 12th. But in any case, so Big Ten tournament, May 10th to the 12th, Thursday through Saturday. I would assume, all these games are on BTN. Or BTN to go if you don't have BTN, which I, unfortunately, down here in Florida, do not have. But in any case, Michigan's the number 1 seed. Minnesota is the 2 seed. And 3rd is Indiana. 4th is Northwestern. Those teams all get a bye. And then you've got 12 teams in here. And let me see something quick. There's 3, 6, 9. That's what I thought. There's 14 teams. Penn State and Rutgers, just as far as I know, are not in here. They're the bottom 2 teams for softball. But anyway, Michigan, number 1 seed, gets a bye, as well as number 2, Minnesota, number 3, Indiana, number 4, Northwestern. As far as, a big difference in record, Michigan's 18-3 in conference, 43-10 overall. That's a lot better than anyone else's. Minnesota 17-4, only a game behind Michigan. But has 7 fewer wins. Indiana 17-6, and then you're getting into Ohio State, Northwestern, Illinois 14, 13-8. So Michigan team to watch, I guess, on the national scale. And, if they get upset, I guess who knows what happens in terms of selecting. But 43-10 overall, you've got to assume that Michigan is safely in. I guess that's kind of the key to watch is, obviously with any tournament is if there are any upsets, if any of these teams get an automatic bid by winning the conference tournament. But I find it very interesting, Troy, and, I would need to look more into it, that Penn State and Rutgers, the bottom two teams, are not in this bracket. I don't know if you're just automatically done, which would be very interesting to me. I think that would create a ton of urgency to end the regular season. Because then you absolutely have no shot. Not that you're the 13th or 14th best team in, say, Big Ten men's basketball and you go on a run and win the whole thing. That basically never happens. But it's interesting if you're not even allowed to participate in the tournament.
I like it. To be honest, I like it. I mean, maybe they should do something like that in basketball. I mean, I think this is a good time to throw out what I was telling you in the pregame. You look at it, these conferences keep growing and growing, Kevin. They talk about Power 5 conferences and teams wanting to go to this conference or this conference and the conference affiliation. You want to solve these problems, when we're going to get into the schedule real quick. I was never happy when the Big Ten expanded. I wasn't. People can say, well, more money, more exposure, more teams, more money, better competition. At the end of the day, Kevin, I think it waters it down. It waters it down in the sense that you're not going to have 14 dominant teams in the Big Ten. It's in any sport. I don't care what sport you're talking about. I mean, we look at basketball last year. I mean, Michigan made the final. You had Purdue, you had Michigan State, and you had Ohio State on a good run. But we never thought Ohio State was a championship caliber team. So really, we didn't even think Michigan was like a championship caliber. We knew they were an NCAA team. So if you look at the preseason, when we went through our Big Ten preview, we didn't even have Michigan in the top elite group as you grouped your teams.
Right.
We had them in the second tier. And even the second tier only included, I believe, like 3 teams, Kevin.
Yeah.
That's 5 out of 14. Now, if you only had your 10 teams in there, the original Big Ten, that's half your conference. You do play everybody twice, and this is kind of why I'm talking about this now. You do play the Michigan States twice. You do play the Purdue's twice. It is fair across the board, and you don't water down the competition. AKA Nebraska, look at their record last year, Kevin, in the Big Ten. What an amazing record they had. Oh, but by the way, they didn't play any of the big dogs. Or they played the big dogs once. They didn't play them twice. That's all I got on that, youngster. We can move forward if you want, or if you want to comment, go ahead.
No, I've got nothing more on it. I think it would create some urgency, create some interesting stuff, especially if you're a team like locked into, say, the 3 seed going into the Big Ten tournament, and you're playing one of those bottom teams who's fighting for their life to just make the tournament. That'd be interesting. Just that in general. I think it creates more urgency. And like you said, with watering it down, I mean, sorry, but baseball has lost my interest over the years because there's 162 games. I mean, that's just the way it is. I think that's a lot of football's why a ton of people love football is because, and even college football, you got like 12 regular season games. It's like, yes, every single game does matter. I mean, for Ohio State, you can say, oh, teams like that, you can lose one. That's like, kind of, because if you lose one, then it's like, okay, you really, hopefully an Ohio State, a Penn State, one of those teams that just randomly gets selected in the top 10, the preseason top 10, and the College Football Playoff Committee at least looks at that, I'm sure. I'm sure they don't neglect the rankings given by the AP before they assess these teams and give their rankings, which I do like that it's separate. The College Football Playoff, for example, does not have a preseason, ranking system. So you're just going by the AP. But in general, even in football, even if you're Ohio State, I mean, You can lose one, and if you look crappy doing it and you're not blowing out teams you should, you're probably not making it, you know? So for me, I think that's what makes football really cool, is that every game is important. And not to take away from basketball, I'm a football, basketball guy. I've said in the past that, you know, if I had to cover just one sport, it would probably be college basketball. But that's what gets lost in, say, the NBA regular season. When you got 82 games, even college basketball, it's hard to watch 35 games of Wisconsin basketball if you're a Wisconsin basketball fan. It's just hard to, you know, because of other commitments in life. For football, you know it's going to be probably Sunday afternoon, or if it's a really good game, and then you really got an excuse to wait till Sunday night or Monday. But so I think that's part of it, is you're not watering it down. You're not having 25 NFL games where, you know, over the course of a regular season, then not every game does really truly matter. And you can make the argument that one game separates this team from making the playoffs and doesn't, whatever. But really, college football, I mean, every single Saturday matters. You know that no matter what team you are, which is cool to me. But so moving to the Big Ten, in terms of men's basketball, they're adding 2 games to their conference schedule. That's starting this fall. They're the first conference to do this, so they're going to have a 20-game conference schedule, which seems like a lot. But when you have 14 teams, that means you're one team playing 13 others. There's only 20 games. If you were to play everyone twice, that'd be a 26-game conference schedule, which I'd be perfectly fine with. By the way, I guess to let the cat out of the bag, that's my overall thought on this, is that it's cool that the Big Ten's the first major conference to, you know, expand its conference regular season schedule to 20 games. The ACC is also doing it, but they're starting it a year later. So the Big Ten's doing this 2018 to 19 that season, aka the upcoming season. ACC is doing it 2019 to 2020. But so I think in general it's cool, but until you start playing everyone twice, then there's no real.
I'm going to jump in, youngster, here, because you brought up something that I agree with, and you started getting into it. You got to play everybody twice, and people say, "Oh, life isn't fair." Well, here's the thing: it's not fair for those schools either that cupcake their schedule in the beginning to get 8 wins, so that they can get to the 20-win plateau. Whereas other schools are going to play top 50 competition and maybe go 4-4. And then at the end of the year, when it comes to selection time, they're left out of the selection time because they played 4 top 50 teams, happened to lose those, whereas Patty Cake over there won all of their 8 Patty Cake games, and so they have a better record, and they did the same in the conference. And again, we just talked about it with Nebraska. Yeah, they had a great Big Ten conference record, but it was the easiest of all the schools based on, and it was random selection. I'm not blaming Nebraska. They don't pick the conference schedule. But my point here is that by expanding, and if you went to 26 games, oh no, you can't play John Doe University. Oh, you can't play the Parkway College. Some of these schools, Kevin, played just total no-names, and to me it's a waste of time. I won't even turn it on. You asked me about that in the beginning of this year. I think it was like 7 games into the Badger schedule before I actually watched the game because I didn't care. I don't care about them playing a UW Parkside. They should be Parkside. I don't care about them playing a low-level Division I team. I want to see Big Ten basketball. I think if they went to 26 games, I think you would get more viewership. I think you would get more competition. I don't think there'd be a darn thing wrong with it. I really don't. And then you really can get me going, and if you really want my honest opinion, kick 4 teams out and go back to the original Big Ten. Or take Big Ten. I don't care who you kick out. I mean, the original Big Ten to me, my old school's talking, I know it's not possible, but you got to get it where you play everybody twice in basketball, home and away, because in college basketball, it does matter if you play at home or play away, especially in college basketball. That's all I got. I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, I'll run through Nebraska's losses. This past season, they lost at Michigan State. Okay, understandable. They lost at Purdue. Okay. They lost at Penn State in overtime, who won the NIT. Okay. They lost at Ohio State, who had a really good year, by 5 points. Their only loss that it's like, wow, Nebraska should have won that game was at Illinois toward the end of the year. Outside of that, they also lost to Michigan, who beat everyone except the national. They made it to the national title game. Okay, so you really, I mean, Nebraska did all they could do, and they beat everybody they literally should have, except one game, and they still don't make the NCAA tournament. That's over a 32-game season. 32 games. So I want to bring it to this, that let's say you do have a 26-game conference season. Okay, so 26 games are in the Big Ten. Then you have 6 non-conference. That's more than, let me see here, almost a fifth. It's over a sixth. So over a sixth of your schedule is non-conference. Okay, and then less than 5/6 is conference play. That makes sense to me. I don't know about you. Football, it's worse.
6 is way more than enough. I think I know where you're going with this. Take a look at the college football schedule. Look at their non-conference. Divide their non-conference by the total games. See what the percentage is, and then do it for basketball. Like for basketball, the non-conference schedule is almost like 33% of their schedule. They play so many games that don't mean a thing. You don't need more than 6 tune-up games before you get into conference play. I'm sorry. You're not going to – nobody out there. If you think you can change my mind, find me on Twitter, TroyRobert967. If you think you can change the youngster's mind, find him on Twitter, @KidCunny. Not changing my mind on this, Kevin. 26 Big Ten conference games, 6 non-conference games, more than enough. Do it and make it fair.
Nebraska played 32 games in the regular season. 18 of those were Big Ten. 14 were non-conference. If you take 14 from 32, that's over 43% of its games were non-conference. That's crazy. That's insane. Football, you take 3 out of 12. Basically, everyone plays 3 non-conference games. Everyone plays 12 regular season games. That's a quarter. Even a quarter is kind of too much, in my opinion. But so if you make it 26, that's 6 out of 32. I guess I'll do the math right here. But yeah, it's almost a fifth of the games. That to me sounds about right. I mean, a fifth of your games basically are non-conference. Okay, the other 4/5 are conference games. That makes sense to me. It shouldn't be almost half and half, and that's what it is. The Big Ten's going to 20, which, so I guess at that point you've got 12 out of 32 games are non-conference, which still is over 37%. Over a third of your games are non-conference. That's still too much. I really think 6 and 26 is perfect for the Big Ten. And I know not every conference has 14 teams, but if the ACC with, I think it's 16 for basketball, if they wanted to go to 32 conference games, I mean, I think that might be overdoing it. I mean, that would really be your entire I guess you'd play 30 because you'd have 15 of the teams other than yourself. I guess I understand not having 2 non-conference games and 30 conference games, but at the same time, I mean, that's I don't know. That's where the conference makes its money. Unless you're Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, Michigan State, and you play in that Champions Classic, or you're a consistent Maui Invitational team, and you'll get consistent money from that. I don't know. Your main bread and butter comes from conference games because, unfortunately, unless you are Duke or Kansas or Kentucky, you're not selling out your stadium for Wisconsin to play, like you said, Troy, Louisiana Tech. No one, not that no one's going, but the urgency is not there. Even if it's Rutgers and Nebraska or Wisconsin, I think split its games against Rutgers, or Rutgers beat them at Rutgers a year ago. So that to me, there's just so much more urgency, and for the Big Ten, it's almost perfect. I think having 6 non-conference games and then 26 conference games, you play everyone twice. No, not everything is fair, and I don't think every single thing in life should be necessarily fair. That would be ideal, but it's sports. It's understandable that not everything can be fair. I'm not about having everything be fair, but I think it makes sense. Like I said, for the ACC, it doesn't make much sense to have 30 conference games and 2 non-conference. I agree that you should have more than that, realistically. Football shouldn't be a quarter of your season being non-conference games. I think that's too much. But as a whole, I mean, how many teams can you just smash, 48-0? Really? Do you need 3 of those before you play Auburn, before you play Michigan State? Honestly, you need 3 of those, and occasionally a quarter of your conference will actually play someone interesting. Like Wisconsin will play LSU. That's like, okay, that's cool. I'll watch that as a, just random Big Ten guy. Yeah, I'll watch Wisconsin LSU. I'm not going to really care about Wisconsin, Sam Houston State. That's just me. And I'm sure the television ratings reflect that.
I don't even care about Wisconsin, Sam Houston State. And I'm a Badger fan.
Yeah.
Again, Kevin, I've mentioned this even in the football season. These games to me, that they're exhibition games. They do mean more in college football because they're wins. But as far as me evaluating my team, the Badgers, I can't really evaluate them when they're playing teams of lesser quality. Yeah, they're glorified exhibition games, but they count towards your regular season record. Same thing in basketball. And I know that there's going to be upsets, and that for these smaller schools, it's a way to make money because these big schools will pay them to come to, for example, I'll just use UW Parkside. UW Parkside going to Madison. Parkside's getting money from Madison to play in that series. They're getting paid to do that and to take on that game. So I understand that what we're talking about, Kevin, will reduce revenue in some of these smaller schools, but honestly, I don't care. I do not care. Because when you're looking at the overall competition and what's best for the game, conference play is best for the game. And right now, 20 games is a step in the right direction, but even now, we were talking about it before the show, you're still not playing everybody twice. So what do? I came up with an idea. I want to get your quick thoughts here. You got 20 games now. You got 14 teams in the Big Ten. You split them up like football. A West and an East division. You play everybody in your division twice. You play everybody from the other division once. There's your 20 games. Or 19. It would only be a 19-game schedule at that point. Give you 13. Still way too many. But I'm going with what they've recommended or what they're going to go to. That would be one way to do it. And then the next year, maybe you flip-flop it and you play everybody from the other division twice and everybody in your division once. Because at the end of the year, you're still taking all the teams into the Big Ten tournament, and you can just seed them by record at that point. But again, the records are never going to match up equally because not every team is playing the same games. It's never going to be that way unless you play 26. But I like the division thing, and if you're the ACC with 16 teams, you could do, I don't know how you do it, maybe two divisions of 8, play everybody in your division twice, that's 14, everybody in the other division once, that's 21. So, again, it's still not playing everybody twice, but at least it's a step in the right direction in my mind, Kevin. But back to circle our point, Big Ten should be 26 conference games. That's all I got.
Yeah. No, I think introducing divisions to basketball, men's basketball in particular, for example, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Yeah, I've got nothing new to say on that. I think we're both in agreement. 26-game schedule, play everyone twice. Can't really argue with that. 6 of your 32 games would be non-conference. I think that's enough. I think 6 games gets it done. I think, 3 weeks gets it done, 2.5, whatever it would be, however you want to space it out, I think that's enough. I do. I've got one more thing, Troy, unless you've got anything else to add. Just some kind of breaking news, I guess, in terms of football for the Big Ten. Ohio State in particular, for Ohio State fans to care about. And this actually brings me to a potential talking point for next week's show, which I can allude to once I guess I'm not.
Lay it on me. Lay it on me, youngster. Lay it on me. I got nothing else.
So Ohio State had J.T. Barrett the last 85 years as its quarterback. He obviously moved on because he used up his eligibility in the NFL now. But so Dwayne Haskins, the guy that replaced Barrett against Michigan toward the end of the year because Barrett got hurt, he was in kind of a quarterback battle with Joe Burrow, who has been with the program. Burrow was a junior. Haskins, had gotten the nod because Burrow had been injured, and Haskins took over the spot. And everyone, including myself as an Ohio State football fan, said, hey, this guy's a better thrower than J.T. Barrett already. And so Haskins is now officially basically the guy for Ohio State going forward because Burrow, the other quarterback who was in the mix, announces intention to transfer because I'm assuming it was basically known that Haskins was winning the job or getting more reps or whatever it was. But so interesting for Ohio State fans because that's the main question mark going forward. If you're Ohio State, and as an Ohio State football fan, I'm excited because I think Haskins has the best arm that an Ohio State quarterback's had in quite a while. So I'm excited for that, just Ohio State football news. But as far as a topic for next week's show, I don't know if you think this is stupid or not, but teams putting a limit on where guys can transfer after they do transfer. And for Burrow, it's actually more interesting because even as a junior, he's a redshirt junior. He already graduated from Ohio State, so he doesn't even have to sit a year. So is it right that Ohio State says, no, you can't transfer to Michigan. No, you can't transfer to Nebraska. No, you can't transfer to Rutgers. No, you can't transfer to who we're playing in 2020 on the schedule in the non-conference. So, no, you can't transfer to Louisiana Tech because we might play you 2 years from now, 3 years from now. I think that's an interesting topic. I have no idea where you lean on it, Troy. I have my thoughts. Not going to start that debate on this show.
No, we're not going to start this conversation today because, again, I always got to preface. If you're a loyal listener, you know my background. I just don't want to blurt it out. But the new listeners, I was a college soccer coach. Player transfers, university has to give permission. University has to do that. Basically, the short of it before we log off today or sign off today, whatever you want to call it, is that I'll say it this way. I look at my players. I loved my players when I was a college coach. But once they're in the university, you're property of the university. It's almost like a contract in the NFL. You're property of that team. You sign a scholarship, you're property of that school. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm saying it's a reality. That is the reality. You signed on the dotted line, so now you became property. And I'm putting it that way, and people will say, man, really degrading that. I really want to make the point because I think it'll be a great talking point next week, youngster. These players become property of a university. And, you and I have talked about this. They don't get paid. They're asked to go out there and bash their heads in every Saturday. Or, on the basketball court, to make a lot of sacrifice. You are property of that university. Now, again, I'm not even gonna let the cat out of the bag about which way I feel about this, but I wanted to make that point that when a athlete signs on the dotted line for a scholarship, the university has to release them from that scholarship if they want to transfer. And it's not over there, Kevin. You know that. Because we talked about Michigan's quarterback. Actually, we didn't on this show. If you transfer, you then have to ask permission and apply for eligibility to play. Many times you have to sit out a year because the NCAA denies your request to become eligible immediately. So there are a lot of little things that go on here. It's not just as simple as saying, oh, you know what, I want to play. I don't want to sit behind this guy. And I'm cool with that if that's what he wants to do. But for those listening in that don't know the ins and outs, you can't just get up and leave and then go to another school and play like 1, 2, 3. There are a lot of little intrinsic things that have to go on before a player, 1, is granted a release, and 2, can actually suit up and play for his new school. So all I got, youngster. You have anything to add there?
No, yeah, it is a lot more complicated than what people think, and especially a grad transfer, you've got to, really be gung-ho about that specific major and what you're going into. If you are a graduate transfer, I think it was Iowa's basketball coach was talking about that because he was asked a question about, hey, this kid, is looking to transfer, and it was rumored that, Iowa might be a possible landing spot for him. And the coach is like, well, if he's interested in what he's interested in studying here at the next level since he graduated from the other place, and so he's automatically, ready to play next season, I don't want him to step on my guys' toes right now. I don't think that would be fair to my guys, but it all stems from academics too. So there's a lot that goes into it. And also I guess my last point, not to start the debate at all, but last point that we haven't mentioned on the show, Shea Patterson, the quarterback who transferred from Ole Miss to Michigan, has been granted eligibility for this upcoming season, which is huge.
And I will say, good job, NCAA. Good job, NCAA, because the reason he's transferring is not because he just didn't want to play there anymore. Oh, that's part of it. But everything that went on as far as outside of his control at that university, he had nothing to do with it. I am happy the NCAA allowed him to play, didn't make him sit out a year and go to school and sit on the sidelines. So good job, NCAA. I don't say that often, youngster. I don't applaud them very often.
We love you, NCAA.
I am applauding the NCAA today. Thank you. I think it's great for the sport. I think it's great for the conference. And, I'm sure Ohio State fans are like, oh, that sucks. No. If you're a fan and you want to play against the best competition, this kid's a good quarterback. I'm glad. I'm happy. And I'm very because I told you. I'm like, I don't think the NCAA is going to grant him eligibility. I flat out told you that off the air. I don't think they're going to. Well, and I think I said it. We'll see what they do. I think they did right this time. So the NCAA, you just proved to me that you can do things right. So stay on that path. Keep doing things right. That's all I got.
I'll say this. Shea Patterson is his name. He was a 5-star quarterback. He was, I think, number 4 overall prospect coming out of high school. He's got an arm. And there have been experts, saying this is the best quarterback Jim Harbaugh has had ever in college by far outside of Andrew Luck. That's the one caveat, but there's not many college quarterbacks who are better than Andrew Luck in college. But so this helps Michigan tremendously. And this, again, I'm an Ohio State fan. I love it. It's great. Because, yes, I want Michigan to be bad. I hate Michigan, At the same time, it really was not fun there for like a 4 or 5 year stretch where Michigan was going through Brady Hoke and going through Rich Rodriguez, and it's just like, this team's not good. This isn't like that fun to beat up on a team that's just very average. And if you're Ohio State, you always have the athletes, it seems like, in recent history anyway, to demolish teams that are just average. Occasionally you'll completely lay an egg against Iowa. So, yes, you have to watch every single game. Every game matters for sure. But in general, Ohio State was just beating the crap out of Michigan, and it's just like, this is cool because Ohio State's beating the crap out of Michigan, but at the same time, it's not as fun. It's not as fun as number 1 versus number 2 and beating Michigan or even losing at Michigan. Then it's respectable. It's understandable. It's cool. It adds to the rivalry. And Shea Patterson left Ole Miss primarily, I think, because of the sanctions and all the crap that was going down there and all the players trying to leave there because of all the stuff that was happening there. So I think that's the main reason why the NCAA let them, automatically play the next year. was eligible to play the next year. It's certainly not like a free agency thing. We'll get into it in next week's show because I know there are a lot of opinions with it. Should it be a free agency period after every single year, or should you have to wait? So interesting debate we'll have on next week's show. Not to plug next week's show, but I am.
It's going to be a good one. And looky at the clock, youngster. We stayed under an hour today.
Yeah,
it's actually longer than you and I thought because when we first started the pregame, we were like, this is going to be a short one today. Well, 1 hour for us is kind of short. But we can get, as you can tell, folks, if you've listened this long, as you can tell, the youngster and I can take anything and turn it into a conversation. So if you want to give us some ideas and things to talk about, find us on Twitter. @YoungsterOldMan is our show handle. We do more than just a Go Big show. We do 4 other radio shows. We also can be found individually at Troy Robert 967. That's the old man. And the youngster is at Kid Cunny. I'm going to let the wonderful listeners go, youngster. I think they've heard enough of our voices this week. Have a great week, everyone. The youngster and I will get back with you next week. Enjoy your day.